Hey, I wanted to talk about another interesting vintage scent that was created a really long time ago for perfume in 1990. And so, as in the beginning of the 20th century was a period when some of the OG French perfumes were created and still exist. I wanted to talk about Guerlain Mitsuko. Guerlain Mitsuko fragrance is one of the classiest French perfumes that are that is still created these days with some altered notes, of course, due to some IFR restrictions, but overall is more or less style-wise the same as it used to be back in the day. Similar to some Guerlain scents, some Chanel scents, for example, Chanel number 5 that was also created in the beginning of this 20th century. And the Guerlain Mitsuko is a fragrance with earthy, mossy, warm, spicy, woody, citrus, floral, aromatic, fruity, and cinnamon sweet notes. So I was in Jan Sakurates, which was a Latvian diplomat museum a few days ago, and also in his collection you could see some Mitsuko and some Kelke bottles from two at that time and even these days quite popular and considered as a classic French perfume houses, and that are still manufacturing the same scent even nowadays with some slight tweaks and alterations due to some EU restrictions and some restrictions in regards to the perfume oils that are used in the perfume notes, but overall this is one of the scents that has more or less been reminiscent and still the same these days. And if you like vintage scents, if you like classical scents, scents that haven't changed for many decades, and then this is one of the scents that you can acquire, and it is quite accessible. You can buy it online and also in many stores, and even in some duty free in airports. This is a fragrance by House of Guerlain, which is a chypre fruity fragrance for women, and it was launched in the beginning of the 20th century, so it is still true to the core vintage scent, and the perfumer behind this is the House of Guerlain creator, Jacques Guerlain. And talking about the perfume notes, the top notes is bergamot. One of the reminiscent strongest notes is bergamot note, which is quite popular for French perfume houses and also is also something that you can see in the Chanel perfume, in the Chanel number 5 and many other Chanel perfumes. And of course, Mitsuko is part of that decade as well, when the Chanel number 5 was created, is quite true to the core at that time perfume. And so the rest of the top notes are rose, jasmine, citrus, middle notes of peach, ylang, lilac, rose, and jasmine, and base notes of oak moss, spices, vetiver, cinnamon, and amber. Similarly to Calque Fleur perfume, also Guerlain Mitsuko is a perfume with the middle note of traditional French perfumery, so different florals, lighter, whiter florals, yellow florals, and top notes of some bergamot, which is a citrus that helps to elevate the floral middle notes. But base notes of oak moss, spices, vetiver, cinnamon, and amber are actually quite also unique for that time, but at the same time very similar to a French perfume house Calque Fleur perfume, and also something that was very trendy in later decades in 1980s. So oak moss with the combination of amber and cinnamon, some spices, is very classical 80s style perfume. But despite this, it actually was also used in this vintage fragrance, so very early for that time. And of course, talking about House of Guerlain, another fragrance, a timeless classic for that decade, which was created in reminiscence of the earlier scents also created by House of Guerlain is Shalimar by also Jacques Guerlain, the perfumer, the creator of this particular perfume house, and both perfumes, of course, still have the top bergamot note, which also is very classical for the decade. But talking about this particular scent and many reviews on Fragrantica, as you can see, also note that this particular fragrance is considered a vintage classic. If you like vintage scents, this scent you will most likely also like, especially if you like floral notes with some sandalwood and some bergamot accords. This is a fragrance that you might actually like. And overall, talking about the vintage scents as well, some of the scents that you see these days, you can buy also from the vintage times. For example, in 1980s, the same fragrance will have slightly different ingredients than the modern fragrance, and the same way, of course, for fragrances created in the early 1920s and 1990s. This is also something that you have to take into account, that they will have some details, some animalic notes that will differ due to EU regulations that ban, for example, civet note, natural civet cat note, as it would be considered as animal cruelty, and some natural notes such as restricting oak moss use, because it would actually endanger this specific plant species. And at the same time, despite this, of course, as the fragrance is thus as a result less lasting and not as unique, it is still something to value. The fact that you can still purchase the vintage scent these days, even if it is tweaked here and there. So that's all for today. Bye.